Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Vivian Spector. I am president of the League of Women Voters of Addison, Charles County, Kensington. Thank you for attending the candidates forum for candidates for Pennsylvania State House of Representatives for the 153rd Legislative District, sponsored by the League of Women Voters, the Meadowbrook Civic Association, and the Abington Council of Civic Organizations. The candidates are Nicholas Mamiachi, Republican, Madeline Dean, Democrat, and Kenneth Krawchuk, Libertarian. Okay, we'll go on to the first question. Why are you running, and what are your priorities? Kenneth Krawchuk.
I'd like to thank the audience for coming out here tonight and spending time with us to do your civic duty to find out what's going on in the world. Why am I running? I'm running because enough is enough. Taxes are too high. The reason why taxes are so high is because spending is too high. The reason why spending is so high is because government is too large and too pervasive. In fact, over the last 50 years, the size of government and our taxes have been growing more than 3.5 times faster than the rate of inflation, and that trend shows no sign of ending. It doesn't matter whether you have a Republican in office, a Democrat in office, upward is the way taxes go, upward is the way spending goes, and upward is the way the size of government goes. It is time, ladies and gentlemen, to elect a libertarian. We libertarians are different from the two old parties because we are the party of principle. Every law we support, every law we oppose can all be traced back to one central idea. The idea that your life is yours, that your property is yours, that you have the God-given, inalienable right to live your life your way without interference, provided only you respect the rights and property of your neighbors. That's it. What would my agenda be? To defend your right to live your life your way without interference. Now, I'm curious to hear what my two opponents are going to say. I'm going to make a wager here that they're going to come up with ways that they can spend your money better than you. They're going to have plans for you to live your life their way. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see.
Question number 2. What will you do to help create training programs leading to eventual jobs for the unemployed in District 153? Okay.
When I first heard that question, I had some questions about the question. So when you say, what am I going to do about jobs training? Do you mean me personally, or do you mean me doing something with the government? Well, let me be polite and answer both of those questions. First of all, to answer for the government, how many of you out there think politicians should pander to special interests? Of course not. Now, what if they were pandering to that politician for a special interest for something that was not in the Pennsylvania Constitution? You'd be asking them to violate their oath of office. I've read this document more times than I can possibly tell you, and I can tell you there is no authorization at all for the government to spend any money on any jobs program. I would honor my oath of office, and I would not vote for one of those. Now, that's my government answer. Let me tell you my personal answer. I think that we, as a society, have a duty to help the underprivileged, to help people in need. And what I would like to do, instead of turning to government and using the coercive power of taxation to pick your pocket to pay for somebody else's troubles, I would like to come up with a brand new idea. I call it the separation of society and state, where we take all of the well-meaning, good programs and we transfer them out of government to an organization I call society. Society would look just like government. They have a Congress, senators, and representatives, and an executive, but they would not have the coercive power of taxation. Instead, what they would do is they would rely on voluntary contributions. That is the theme of my latest novel, Atlas Snubbed, a parody sequel to Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. I'll talk about it more. I'm sorry I don't have enough time.
Question 3. There have been significant reductions to primary and secondary educational funding at the state level. Given our children are the future and must compete in a global environment, what level of state funding do you feel is appropriate, and what should be the source of any additional funding?
my apologies again. I had a question about your question because it assumed something about the answer. Because I don't think that we need to raise the spending on education. What we need to do is keep it the same, maybe even reduce it. But if we change the way that we look at education, we can actually get a better education for the same dollar. Let me explain. Right now, in Pennsylvania, 90% of all students, over 90%, all go to the same school system, the government school system. It's a virtual monopoly. And like all monopolies, choice is low, price is high, quality is not exactly the best. What I would like to do is introduce competition into our government school system. And the way I would do that is bringing in somebody who's been forgotten when they go to Harrisburg, the parents. Specifically, what I would like to see is that the parents can choose any government school for their child they want, and the funding which would have gone to the local school would follow the child to the school of the parent's choice. That way, good schools, good in the opinion of the parents, not the opinions of Democrats or Republicans, good schools would get more funding and grow, and the poor schools would not get funding and they'd have to fail and shut down. And then the good schools could take over the failing schools, use the same techniques that made the parents want to choose them for their children, and then bring the failing schools up to snuff. So for the same dollar, by introducing parents into the equation, we can have better education for our children without picking your pockets or having you live your life their way.
The Citizens United decision will impact judicial elections in Pennsylvania with an influx of corporate and other monies. Will you support merit selection of judges?
I don't know, maybe I read too much into questions, but I have a question about this question too, because I don't really see a tight connection between the Supreme Court decision and merit selection of judges. Because right now in Pennsylvania, corporations are not permitted to contribute at all to any state campaign. So none of us can receive corporate contributions. So first of all, it's not going to affect many races in Pennsylvania.
Are you forgetting PACs?
I'm sorry?
Are you forgetting PACs?
PACs, if they are Pennsylvania, they're political committees, not political action committees, and they cannot accept corporate checks either. In any case, so that was one part of it. The other part of it is that right now, the whole judicial environment is a little bit too clubby for my taste. What we need is to keep the citizen's finger on the judiciary. Do you remember the pay raise a couple of years ago? In the middle of the night, the legislature voted themselves a pay raise, and they did it without the 3 days of hearings as required by the Pennsylvania Constitution. Supreme Court Justice Nigro was one of the Supreme Court justices who reviewed that case. And you know what he said? He said, no, it's okay. You guys can violate the Constitution. You didn't have to take 3 days to do this. Well, guess what? He was up for election a couple of months later, and the electorate canned him because they said, no, the Constitution says you've got to read the bill 3 days in a row, not overnight. You have to follow the Constitution. You've got to do it. And they repealed that pay raise, except for judges.
What is your position on abortion and insurance payments for contraceptives? Well, Nick, you want to start?
They never, you know, they never.
Well, let me do the easy part first. Insurance companies can set up any contract that they would like with you. If you want an insurance policy that covers contraceptives, that's between you and your insurance company. I'll set that aside. Regarding abortion, I think that the way that it's defined right now, pro-life, pro-choice, I don't think that's the way to look at it, because I call myself pro-option. There's a third choice. What I would like to see is that if a woman does not want her unborn baby, fetus, whatever you want to call it, then any individual or organization can step up and adopt that fetus before it's born. Now follow through what all the various results of this would be. The first one is that there are a lot of babies who are aborted for economic reasons. Well, of course, the adopting parents would pay for the delivery. So right away, we know we're going to save some babies. But we're leaving the choice up to the woman. The parents can ask the woman, please bring the baby to term. And she can say yes or no. That's pro-choice. But we're saving babies. that's pro-life. Now, if the woman says yes, hey, we saved the baby. If the woman says no, then I turn to science for an answer. What we can do is use the power of science to either transplant the baby or deliver it prematurely. Now, science right now is at the point where about 7 months you can safely deliver a baby. But people who care about the unborn would be able to invest their money in research to bring that date back to 5 months, 4 months. I see a date coming. If we can go to a pro-option approach where you can adopt the unborn baby, or someday an unborn baby never need die. There are not enough babies in the country to adopt as it is. We can turn this to a win-win situation.
Pennsylvania has almost 6,000 structurally deficient bridges and 8,452 miles of highway rated as poor. Railroad bridges over the Susquehanna River in Fort Washington and Riding Station are choke points and inhibit economic development. Would you do anything to change that?
Ms. Specker, what a damning summation of the state of the roads, highways, and bridges in Pennsylvania. You're absolutely correct. We have trusted the highways to the care of the government, and look what they've done. We have traffic jams. I drive into Philly every day, or the other side of Philly. It's a mess. We've tried this experiment. It's failed. What I would say to do is, just as we've done in other areas, it's time to get government out of the business that should be done by private industry. So I would support things like privatization of the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and also the smaller roads. I would retain the funding we have now, because right now it's paid for by the gas tax. And I love that. It's not really a tax, because it's a user fee. If you use the highways, you buy gas, you're paying for the roads. If you don't use the highways, you don't buy gas, you don't pay for the roads. It's just like apples. You don't go into the Gennardi's, and if you don't eat apples, you don't buy, you don't pay for it. I would like the same thing done with highways. Now, when I usually say that, people say, oh, you want private highways, what's going to happen? You know, they're going to have rich people controlling them? No. A lot of us remember back in the days, it was only about 25 years ago, when all the telephones were run by one company, Ma Bell. And back then, the Libertarian Party was one of the first parties to jump on the bandwagon to say, privatize Ma Bell. And do you know what happened? Here we have communicators that Captain Kirk would love to have. This is what we would see if we would privatize the highways. You would see things you couldn't even imagine. I would be in favor of getting government out of the highway business as soon as possible.
Next question. College tuitions and fees have increased 1,120% since records began in 1978. Rather than simply cut funding, what bold ideas do you have to change the way state universities control expenses? Anyone would like to tackle that?
You know, it always comes back to this. We always find the government in areas where it shouldn't be meddling. And what happens is we see the price rising. We see the quality dropping. What I would like to see is government to get out of the education business, and again, to rely on private enterprise. In the days when my father first started working, he didn't go to college. Where he went instead, he went to the Bud Company in Philadelphia, manufacture railroad cars, as an apprentice. Instead of him paying tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get an education, instead the Bud Company paid him to learn. These are the sort of things that we did in the days before government decided to step in and take over higher education funding. And once they start doing that, and of course the prices start going up. The last number I saw said that it cost about $80,000 per kid for the state to pay for higher education. Almost $15,000 for every K through 12 kid. We could send everybody over here to the Friends School for that kind of money.
I don't think you're answering the question. The question is, rather than simply cut funding, what bold ideas do you have to change the way state universities control costs?
Don't you think it's a bold move to get unelected Board of Education in Harrisburg out of the way? They're the ones who are making the decisions. They're the ones who are setting the curriculum. They're the ones who are setting the requirements and all the qualifications for the teachers. They are the ones who are causing the problem. They set it up to cause the problem. They set things up so that the costs are going to be high. I would say the first thing we should do is allow unaccredited teachers who have job experience to teach. For example, I hold 3 United States patents related to database theory and the information technology business. I cannot teach because I don't have government permission to do so.
You teach at a university. You go to a university. And the state.
Please, no interaction yet. No interaction yet.
There you go. My bold idea is to get government out of the way. Thank you.
There are 3,200 municipal pension plans in Pennsylvania that are 36% distressed. How will you go about solving this problem?
You know, I love the Pennsylvania Constitution because there are so many good things in here that people just don't pay attention to. And toward the back, I know you have to read a long way to find it, it says that the state government is not allowed to invest in any corporation or any company or own any stock or anything like that. So why is the state government investing in these pensions? It's not permitted to do that. If a pension is having trouble, then what you need to do is reevaluate the base rules for that pension. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know of any private corporation that has the sort of pensions that the government offers, the defined benefit pension. Instead, what we have are 401ks where we contribute. We contribute as much as we feel we can afford, as much as we want to, so that we know that we're going to have the money for the golden years. That is the sort of thing that I would like to do. I would like to see government get out of the pension business to come up to the 20th century, let alone the 21st century, and do away with the defined benefit plans that are bankrupting us. That's why these pensions are in trouble, because they're offering unreasonable benefits. What we need to do is restructure them. Will some people have to take a hit? Probably. But it's not their own fault. It's the fault of the people who didn't shift the plan when things started to go south all the way back in the 80s. It's taken government 40 years now, 30 years, to finally say, gee, we got to do something. The answer is not more government intervention. The answer is less government intervention. Thank you.
The last question in this part of the program. Bipartisanship and compromise are essential to practical legislative solutions. How would you cross the aisle to solve problems in today's polarized environment?
Ms. Spector, bipartisan?
Bipartisan?
There's 3 of us up here, 3 parties? You know,
Tripartisan.
I would say nonpartisan. You know, one thing that's interesting about being a libertarian is that we don't fit on the typical left-right spectrum. And I get asked quite often how we would work with Democrats and Republicans. Well, the reason why is because we have some things in common, as you've seen. It's not a left-right spectrum, it's more of a diamond, where one side of the diamond is measured in terms of personal freedom, and the other side is measured in terms of economic freedom. Now, I realize I'm painting with a broad brush here, but people on the right tend to believe in a high degree of economic freedom, but a low degree of personal freedom. So they're in favor of lower taxes and less regulations, but they'll be in your bedroom. People on the left are the opposite. They believe in a high degree of personal freedom, but a low degree of economic freedom. Well, we libertarians, we believe in freedom all the time. We believe in economic freedom. We believe in personal freedom. We believe that you have the, I said it before, I'll say it again, you have the right to live your life your way. So when I'm elected and I'm in Harrisburg, whenever there's an issue that's going to grant you more personal freedom, I'll be there voting for it along with the Democrats. If there's an issue that's going to be giving you more economic freedom, I'm going to be standing there with Republicans voting for it. And it's the guy in the middle. Both sides will be coming to me looking for one more vote in their pocket. And you know how I'm going to vote? I'm going to vote in favor of you, the citizens. Thank you.
That is the end of the prepared questions. We now go to your questions. And for those, Steve Turner will...
67.
67 format here. Okay, so we have one question from the audience. In order to attract and retain quality physicians, would you be in favor of an amendment to the state constitution limiting punitive damages in medical malpractice? So, as in Texas, California, let's start with
Well, it's a Constitution question. I think you should start. Well, that's a very good point, is that in order to limit people's choices, then absolutely you would have to change the Constitution. But I don't see this so much as a constitutional question. I see this as another bad stroke against the legal system as it exists right now. Because lawyers have taken the legal system away from us. Instead, they now have it in their hands, such that we have to have insurance for everything. We have to be prepared for so many different eventualities that it's impossible. Now, how many of you have gone to court yourself to defend yourselves? There you go, two of us in the whole room. I'm not a lawyer. I'm an information technology guy. It can't be that tough, or lawyers wouldn't be able to do it. But one of the problems is that they start pushing for these higher and higher awards. What we need to do is we need to bring back more personal responsibility, where somebody is not always responsible for something that may happen to you. If you trip over a broom in the Kmart, why is it Kmart's fault? You didn't watch where you put your big feet. This is the problem we're having with our judicial system, and it's lawyers that are pushing us in that direction. So I would like to see instead that my time is up.
So the next, actually, question, there were a series of questions about fracking. So I'm going to try to give you a flavor of what all of them were about, and you can respond. So one just basically asks what the position of fracking in the state of Pennsylvania is. Another, whether there should be a tax apart from the local impact fees. And then another question asked about, says Bucks and Montgomery counties have won a moratorium on fracking in the South New York Basin in fairness to the other 65 counties in Pennsylvania. And in consideration of our air watersheds, would you support statewide moratorium on fracking in the Marcellus Shale while further studies conducted? So really you have, however you'd like to respond, taxation, moratorium. Let's start with Ken.
Sure. You know, when fracking first appeared on the scene a few years ago, I have to admit I knew nothing about it, and I did a lot of research. My degree is in physics, so I have some background in the area. And the first thing I found out is that a lot of the fears are way overblown. For example, fracking is done very deep under the water tables. So the concerns about pollution and the chemicals and everything, they're just unfounded, because the shale oil that's down there that they're bringing up, the natural gas, that rock by definition is already polluted. So the pollution is not the issue. The real issue is the drilling, because the only time it can get into the water table is if the pipe that's bringing up the gas and the slurry and things like that, if that leaks. So the problem is not one of fracking, because fracking is great for Pennsylvania. I don't know if you've been up in north central Pennsylvania lately, but the economic boom up there is tremendous. The problem is that what we need to do is have regulations that are going to make sure that nobody trespasses with their pollution. And government has obviously not been able to do that. I would like to transfer that authority over to society and have them set the standards for what piping, what drilling should be done. Thank you.
Okay, so since we were talking about the Constitution, there's a question that came in, which was basically asking whether each of you would take an oath to the Pennsylvania Constitution. So rather than going through a long litany, does anybody object to taking an oath to the Pennsylvania Constitution?
I know Ken doesn't.
No, that's for sure. This is my job description. You can count on that.
So we move through that. Next question. What's that? The next question relates to charter schools. If you could explain if you think they're necessary and why. So maybe that would be so.
I think we already know where I stand on this issue. The government has already made a mess of education. To have an unelected Board of Education in Harrisburg and the legislature deciding how your children should be educated, I think only compounds the problem. And by giving money, your money, tax money, to these charter schools, that brings in what I call the political golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. And we're seeing that happen not just with charter schools, but also with parochial schools, because now they're getting around the constitutional mandate which says no money shall be spent on sectarian schools. They pay for busing instead. They pay for books instead. Oh, but only the book is that they approve it. Oh, by the way, they have to approve the teachers. Oh, that teacher's not, we're not allowed to teach. Oh, you can't teach creationism, or you can, or you should, or you shouldn't. We got to get government out of the educational system. Charter schools may have been a good idea at the beginning. It's just more of the same failed monopoly.
Okay. This is a follow-up question regarding, I guess, the transportation system. Are you in favor of SEPTA being totally independent? And I guess it would be following up with to improve public transportation. So I guess microphone's in front of you, so.
Glad to start. You know, I read through my job description, and I didn't see anything in there that says that they're allowed to spend money on SEPTA. So I don't know why they're doing it. I would like to see government get out of the transportation business, just like I'd like to see them get out of the highway business, just like like to see them get out of the education business and all these other businesses that they don't belong in. What I would like to see instead is that transportation settle in at its regular price, because right now it's over-subsidized. What happens then is that there's no market decisions in the deciding the decision, no market-based ideas in the decisions that decide how it's going to be funded, when to have a bus route, when not to have a bus route, how much to fund it, what sort of service is required. Instead, it's decided by politicians in Harrisburg. We should make it local. We should get government out of SEPTA. I have 10 seconds left. And the profitable routes, a lot of the regional rail routes are profitable. Let them stand on their own. Some bus routes that aren't profitable, let's close them down. And let's free the taxis. That way we can have more affordable private transportation.
Can we do a rebuttal?
Let me insert one additional question to think about in the rebuttal. It's about the $7 billion deficit that the Turnpike has. So if you apply the same thinking to the Turnpike, how would you reconcile that deficit?
Well, I've already said that I think we should get government out of the business of the Turnpike. You've just given another damning factor why they should be out of it. But what I'd like to do is, offer my Ellen Bart Constitution to either one of you. You said you're taking an oath to the Constitution. Show me where you have the authority to spend money on transportation.
Well, it's 10 seconds.
It's not in there. There's so many things that are not in the Constitution that they're going to do. They want to take your money and spend it on things illegally. This is why I'm in the race. As I said in the beginning, government is too big, it's too expensive, it's too pervasive. The only way to cut it back is to get up personally and take a hand in it. That's one of the reasons why I'm running. Because I'm tired of them spending my money. I'm tired of them picking my pocket. I'm tired of watching the tax rates going up. I'm tired of them regulating people such that they can't get to work, where they have to take a government-subsidized bus. Why can't I run my own taxi service? That's all. Thank you. Because they said no. Why? People suffer for it.
Next question is about if a budget contains funding for corporations such as Comcast, which is non-restricted, would you vote for it? So I think the essential concept is, does the government subsidize corporations?
Well, I think we already know where I stand on this one.
Call me a libertarian no matter what.
You're at least half libertarian. It's not in the Constitution. They're playing favorites. And even if you're looking at doing something charitable, like welfare, do you know what happens when you send $1 into the government? The first thing that happens to that dollar is that most of it vanishes in the bureaucracy. This is what comes back. It comes back to your local company, maybe it comes to Comcast, but then they have their own bureaucracy, and more of it is gone. This is all that you get back from when you send money to Harrisburg, whether it's for Comcast, whether it's for welfare. You're lucky to get a dime on the dollar back. And when it comes back, they don't give it to you, they give it to their political buddies. They play politics with your money. It's unconstitutional, it's illegal, it's a bad idea, it's uneconomical, and I would vote against anything like that. But you already knew that, right?
Ken, if you're going to rip that up, you could have at least donated it to my campaign.
Ain't worth what it used to be. Again, that's the government's problem.
We're almost at the end. In fact, before we go to the very last question, I'd like to introduce Donna Brewer, who is the president of the Willow Grove Civic Association and a member of the Advocate Council of Civic Associations. But before we we wrap this up, you had a question?
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Kincaid.
Thank you.
Sir, I heard you question the first 4 questions, and I'm watching you dramatic with the ripping the phone, the bill, and then holding up the phone and reading the Constitution, and I think you speak very articulate.
Thank you.
However, it would be very disenfranchising to everyone who took the time to come out tonight if you don't give us a direct answer to the direct question. The question that both of your colleagues answered and you didn't was, what's your position on a woman's right to choose and health care? I heard you say having an abortion is okay, and if you don't have it, it's okay, and if you have the right to give away, it's okay. But I didn't get a straight answer. And I think we deserve a straight answer to that question. Thank you.
Thank you. My straight answer is what I said before. I call myself pro-option on abortion. I think we should change the adoption laws to allow people to adopt a fetus before it's born. Because right now, there aren't enough babies to adopt. That's why people go overseas. It's expensive, it's chancy, and after 5 years in America, they can pull the baby back from the adoptive parents. So the love is there, the demand is there. So what I'd like to do is, by changing the adoption laws, you can allow somebody to adopt a baby before it's born, pay for the delivery. Now, some babies are aborted for economic reasons, and those reasons would vanish. We would wind up saving babies, but you'd still be asking the woman whether or not she wants to bring the baby to term. So I'm not dodging the question. I'm just not falling into the partisan trap.
You can't answer the question. Thank you very much.
I certainly do. Let's change the adoption laws to allow people to do prenatal adoption. That's my answer.
At this point, we will give you each 60 seconds for a wrap-up.
I'm going to thank the League of Women Voters. I appreciate being here, especially to include third parties. Very brave of you and very, very democratic of you.
If you are on the ballot, we invite you.
You're the man. You have the God-given inalienable right to live your life your way. Your life, your way, without interference, provided only you respect the rights and property of others. Everything I have said tonight has held up to that principle. And I asked, what were these people going to say? I was taking notes. They support unconstitutional programs, whether it's an unconstitutional jobs program. They want roads, construction. She said they'd have money on the table. Why didn't she give it back? I don't know. Isn't that our money? They took it from us. Let's see. He wants to work with those same educators that caused the high cost of education to begin with. He wants to have business incentives, play favorites. Let's see. What else? Oh, he's an attorney. What's an attorney in the legislative branch doing in the legislative branch, judicial and legislative branch? When you go to the voting booth in November, remember, you're not a Democrat, you're not a Republican, you're a taxpayer. Who do you think could hold the tax line better than a Libertarian? Thank you all.
Thank you, Ken. Look forward to your next book.